Hello everyone and welcome to the Australian Small Business Podcast. My name is Julian Gaylor along with Chris Smith, CEO of Happy HR and Yoke Agency. Good morning.
G'day, Jules.
So today we're doing a bit of a HR wrap, all the groundbreaking news in HR. I don't know why that doesn't have its own primetime TV show. Look, it's one of those things. I think that we know that it's probably not the most exciting or sexy part of running a business, but this is the stuff you need to know so you don't run into problems. We know most small to medium business owners aren't HR qualified, and it's easy to wander into these issues. But today our goal is to give them a few little digestible key takeaways so that they don't wander into these little issues.
Yep.
Look, I think the big one, I mean, we're getting back to some stage of normal after everything's happened in the last 12 months. But one big thing which still does have a bit of variation around it is casual employees. Tell me what's happening there.
Well, look, casuals have had a range of things happen over the last 12 months. We had the Risotto decision regarding, the ability for an employee that was systematically rostered could go back and claim loading. So
that's been a big one, hasn't it? Where I think a lot of people, as much as we hear about subcontractors versus employees, it's, well, what is a casual employer? Where do those lines blur?
Correct.
And what we found, correct me if I'm wrong, is that if a casual worker had regular, predictable shifts, it was found that they actually weren't a casual employee. They were part-time now. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So the laws had a range of amendments, but in the long story short, over the last 12 months, you had the Risotto decision, and then that was a situation where they'd been paid loadings and then they basically got loadings again on top. So they were basically able to double dip with that decision.
That was not great for business owners.
No. So basically many casual contracts, in fact, I would say most that I see don't have a set-off clause in them. And a set-off clause basically states, and you should have this, that basically states if you are ever deemed as a full-time or part-time employee, that you've already been paid your leave loading. So it's acknowledged by both parties that the casual status stands, etc., and nothing else is owing by the business.
So going back to just that double dipping, just to make sure people understand how serious that is. So that we all know that casuals, they get a higher hourly rate in lieu of what benefits?
Correct.
Tell me, what benefits?
So they don't get sick pay, they don't get annual leave and other entitlements that pertain to those two leave holdings.
And of course a lower rate, usually as well, sometimes.
There's a base salary plus a loading on top to counteract that. So the double dipping means they get that loading that they've already been paid twice, because they've been deemed as a systematic rostered employee, which is a big problem from the Risotto decision.
So it was a situation where the casual workers getting paid at an inflated rate because they're not getting all of these other benefits. But then from the Risotto case, it was found that, these what we call systemic casuals, where they've got predictable shifts. It was like, you're not casuals at all. You actually are a part-time employee.
Correct.
So you are entitled to all those other benefits. So not only has an employer paid the casual initially at the higher rate, but now they're then having to back pay all of those entitlements.
That's correct.
So you can see as a business owner, that hurts.
Yeah, absolutely right. So that really hurt people. So there's been an amendment to the Act with casual employees. So it should be known that when you hire an employee, you must give them a copy of the Fair Work Information Statement that states to them their rights as a employee in the Commonwealth of Australia. Now, with the change that's come in March, that you now have to give them the Fair Work Information Statement, and also for casuals, the Casual Fair Work Information Statement. Now, the Casual Fair Work Information Statement talks about the laws that enables an employee to go to a business and say, I've been working here with fairly regular shifts. I am a part-time employee, or should be deemed as, and unless you have a very strong business rationale and you can prove that you haven't systematically rostered other, you may have to give them part-time status. So it's really important for rostering managers, financial controllers, etc., that really are looking at how casuals are being taken care of in your business. Because if you're not watching this carefully, by the new laws which are now in effect, that you can get people demanding to be a full-time or a part-time, and that's going to certainly create some problems for your business, because you may have a seasonal you might have a seasonal business. You might have a winery, as an example, that's now got nice gardens. So the wine guys can prune at prune season and then do the gardens in the summer, in the winter. So there's going to be times where you may use them casually in those effects, essentially saying they're rostered all year long. So they've got a case to say, well, I'm actually part-time.
Yeah.
So be really careful.
It's consistent and predictable.
It is, exactly. So you have to be really careful on how you're handling casual employees. And please go to the FEREC website, and you must give a copy of those statements by law, otherwise that you do get a fine if you're caught, for those FEREC information statements. Very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, that's the thing. If you are have a combination of look, if you employ casuals, full stop, you need to be over this, because they just may not be casual.
Very much so. And that's a revision of your leave policies, a revision of your FEREC information statements, a revision of your employee contracts with a certain range of clauses that protects you from, if in time that there was a systematic roster or error, you've got some coverage there. So it's really important that you, as a business owner, if you're listening to this, get some solid advice around that. Very, very important.
Absolutely. Now, we're at a point now where we're looking at people returning to work, entitlements around leave. There's been a few things that have come up here. Chris, talk to me about that.
So I think it's important that, there's been, a range of new amendments in the Act, like Schedule X, where, someone can take 10 days leave, but take 5 days off in their actual leave entitlements, meaning that they're getting 0.5 of a day for 10 days. So that's, in certain awards, that's actually...
Can you explain that a bit more?
Yeah, of course. So let's say the person has got 5 annual leave days owing at the moment, okay? So in certain awards...
So they're owing, or they have...
They have accrued 5 days. And they say, I actually want to take 10 days off. So under awards like the Clerk's Award, they can take 10.5 days off. So they get paid for
10 half days?
10 half days. So they get paid for 0.5 of a day for 10 days, meaning that they've actually only taken 5 annual leave days. So, and that's because of the fact that people work remotely, working harder, etc. And certain awards have got this being built into them now. So if they choose to do that, they can do that. Obviously by mutual agreement, but there's provisions that do that. And the reason being is people are working flexible hours, people are working remotely, they're working longer and so forth, and these things are really important. On that, the people working longer, there's a lot of people that, like the police and other governmental workers, which is now coming into the professional environment, the ability and the right to shut off. So I think you're going to start to see policies around, and we're getting advice around this for our subscribers at the moment, around the ability to turn off at certain times. So that way they can actually have a life and have that work-life balance. And that's something that a lot of business owners need to consider on how those laws around that is going to affect the way they communicate. There's a lot of employees that are being taken advantage of, and that's the reason for these amendments and changes.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's something that we definitely need to stay across.
Yep.
Another thing which has come up, well, it comes this time every year, we're coming up to the new financial year, which means changes in pay rates, which obviously ties very closely to award interpretations. And this is something that we see people getting wrong all the time, whether it's through interpreting wrong or just making assumptions or actually having nothing to base award interpretations off. I mean, what words of wisdom do you have here, Chris?
Well, first of all, you're right by saying there's major awards changing at July 1st. Yes, the CPI index goes up. Yes, there's award changes every July 1st. But be advised that awards change all the time. So you have to be across your awards, and There are increases and entitlement changes all the time, and it's likely that if you're in retail, hospitality, and other awards, that there has been changes and you might be underpaying your staff based on some of these changes. So it's important to make sure that you're across the entitlements for days, times, penalty rates, whatever, and that's really important. But the other thing that people need to also understand is that you need to have a position. Let's say it's a waiter, okay? Now people might say that people serving in the restaurant, they're all waiters, but let's break down the floor of a restaurant. The floor of a restaurant is you've got runners, and runners take food and take orders, and waiters, level 2, can take alcohol orders and deliver alcohol. A runner can't actually take that order, and a runner can't actually deliver the alcohol. So they're a level 1 hospitality worker, where someone who is the provision of alcohol is a level 2 because they require an RSA. So by rights, they're more qualified.
That's actually an interesting point. This could be, I'm sure everyone has been to a restaurant at some point where someone's brought food, and then they've asked to the person who's brought them the food, they wanted to order some more drinks, and then they've had to say, I'll go get someone who can do that. And you're probably sitting there going, why can't you? You're the waiter.
Correct. And they haven't been trained on the responsible service of alcohol. So what a lot of businesses do is they just pay, waiters, and they may have done an award interpretation last year, but it's changed, or they haven't confirmed that they've cited the RSA. And what's worse is people say, yeah, I've got an RSA, but you haven't checked, and then you get the Liquor Licensing Commission, and they see that person served alcohol, but so all these ramifications can come.
And that's on you as a business, isn't
Correct,
it? Exactly
right. So
has that changed at some point? Did that used to be on the employee?
No, it's a two-way street. You have to cite it and do your risk management around that. But the point, going back to employee awards, is you might classify someone as an administration person, but if they hold a bachelor's in something, that can change the interpretation as well. Just because you've got 2 admin girls or guys and they're doing the same job, if they hold different qualifications, that can also have an impact. So it's really important you understand the role and what changes the level in that award. And it's really important to get very strong advice around this. Now, it's very important if you're dealing with a bookkeeper or an accountant or someone who's doing these awards that they've been well trained in asking the questions. What is the role? Have I cited the PD? Does the PD or the position description, can it be absolutely articulately described as a level 1 or a level 2? And it's a level 1 because they take food but don't take alcohol. And it's really specified in that PD.
I think that's a really big point, and this is where I was saying before that people make assumptions about what awards people should be on, because I think we'd all be confident in saying that the mum and pop's cafe or restaurant down the street have these casual waiters who are there just while they're at uni, and it's like you know what you need to do. But if there is no position description in place, like there's been clearly defined, you can't actually do an accurate award interpretation.
Well, it actually gets worse than that. You haven't got a position description, and they say, but I'm also doing this and this. And because they say that, they could be judged if you had an argy-bargy with that employee. They may be a level 3, not a level 2, and they've underpaid them for 2 years and you've got back pay. So it's really important that you have contracts, position descriptions that are articulated very well to a level, and
reflect what you're getting.
And reflect exactly what we're getting to do. And if you don't do awards interpretations correctly, you are creating a liability in your business you may not even be aware of.
Yeah, we speak about it so often about position descriptions really being the underlying key part in employee engagement and performance. Because once again, these type of businesses, if they don't have position descriptions in place, they're putting themselves in a really tough position if this employee is not performing and they want to terminate them based on poor performance. Because if push comes to shove and this person wants to go to Fair Work and put an unfair dismissal claim in, Fair Work is going to say to these business owners, okay, you've fired Sally over here because she wasn't performing well. Can you please show me where you've specifically documented her performance? Because if you can't, it's like, well, how can you say she's not doing a good job if you've never shown her?
Exactly. Well, this is this though. Let's talk about the employer life cycle in 2 minutes here. Okay.
Oh, you're on the clock. 2 minutes.
So
Go.
you recruit someone. You should give them a contract, policies, and position descriptions all before their first day at work and sign off on that. A position description is essentially forms part of the binding agreement that they know what you want them to do, and you know that they now know. So if it does come to a situation that you're referring to, that you've got your signed agreement between the parties. Now, they've started, and then how many calls do we get where you've got someone who's coming up for probation, I don't like them, so I'm going to get rid of them. Where this whole misnomer of, you know what, you should have a 3-month catch-up and work out how they're going. If they're performing well, then fantastic. If they're not performing well, you need to document that and let them know that they have areas of improvement. If they're not going to improve in those areas, they're not going to pass their probation. The goal is for them to pass their probation, but they need to improve in those areas. You don't get to day, whatever it is, month 6, the end of month 6, if it's a 6-month probation, which we recommend that you do 6-month probationary periods because you need an amount of time to evaluate someone's performance. At the end of the day, if you terminate at that point, you could be risking an unlawful dismissal claim because they didn't know until the 6th month that they weren't performing. You've not documented it. You may have had some glancing conversations, but if you're not documenting these things...
It didn't happen.
It didn't happen. So it's really important that you document those conversations. Now, on top of that, you need to be doing those performance improvement plans. So, hey, you're not doing such a great job here. Here's a performance improvement plan, or here's a development plan that you need to improve in these areas because we want, like you, to pass probation and become a contributing person to our business and our culture. So if you've documented those things you need to then terminate, then the employee knows why they're getting terminated. It's of no surprise to them. It's not constructed in any way. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Like if at month 3 you're like, oh yeah, I'm probably getting rid of this person in month 6. Well, I mean, that may be where your mindset is, but even then, it's still worth your time letting the person know, not only from a compliance point of view to cover your own butt, but giving them a chance to improve because you never know. Like if you have signed off and said I'm done with them in month 3, and then there's another 3 months. That's like a wasted 3 months. You may as well try and see if you can steer the ship around, whether it's performance-based, whether it's cultural-based, because you never know. They might be the right person, because if you do have to terminate at that point, you're probably going to have to replace them, train another person up, and it's just a waste of time.
That's exactly right. So it's important, like, recruit well. There's other podcasts we've done about, developing your dream team, etc. But it's important that you let them know where they need to improve, and you let them know that you're going to put in a training plan to have them have their confidence developed in that particular skill. So you've done all those things, you're right. People go, I wasn't doing so great, but you supported me. Now I'm performing consistently and predictably. So all of a sudden, Johnny Smith, who was like an average employee, has now, geez, Johnny's done such a great job. Hasn't he turned it around? Well, actually, he's going to talk amongst the team, and he's going to he's going to contribute even more to the business. So you haven't mishired, it hasn't cost you dollars, and that's really important. Going on to the disciplinary process, if you've got to terminate someone, inform them that there's going to be a disciplinary meeting. Give them 24 hours notice, and let them know that they can have a support person. It's not okay that a manager sits in as a witness, right? If they're being terminated, they should let them know that they have a right to a support person, and these are the reasons why. And because you've documented previous areas of improvement and they haven't improved, you've got that document. You can say to the employee, in month 3, we did this. In month 4, we did this. In month 5, we did this. And unfortunately, you've not improved in these areas, and here is information that pertains to that level of performance that you're not meeting. So you're not meeting expectations, we're terminating you due to non-performance, and that's important that you've documented that. To go into that disciplinary meeting just to say you've not passed probation doesn't cut it, and you need to be really documenting these things to avoid claims.
And you're setting that up as it's going to be a messy conversation. Like
Correct.
If you blindside someone who thinks that they're doing okay, they may think that maybe they're not up to par, but there's room for improvement. If out of the blue you drop the hammer on them that they're being terminated, that's a dangerous position, because you don't know how they're going to react to that. I don't think anyone's going to be happy with that, but it could be something which has the way that they react may have a poor effect on culture, because other people see that too.
Yep.
Not only because how the person's reacted, other people in the team are going to be like, whoa, he just fired him out of the blue. I mean, geez, am I safe?
That's correct. And when you say to people, hey, we've let John go, as you all know, you get performance managed correctly. We want to see you improve. An example of that, Johnny, you were here and now you're here. You're an example of someone who's taken that. So you can actually improve culture, because let's be really clear here. Performance culture is what every director wants. And if you've got a good performing employee and you put up with mediocre performance from someone at their level and they survive, and this person has to bust their butt to get things going, then this person's going to leave. It's like, why are you accepting that? We both get paid similarly. You're expecting that you're okay with that person's performance. It's not up to scratch. So you have to actually recognize that performance management and being accountable to the things we're talking about actually does improve culture in many, many circumstances.
And in that situation you're putting that, if they're having to carry the load of this person who they're both getting paid the same, the one who is doing more of the work, they're probably going to demand a pay rise.
Yep, correct.
Which arguably is quite justifiable.
Absolutely,
based on what they're doing.
Yep.
But then as a business owner, you're in a tough spot there that, well, okay, you still have to pay this other person that same amount, but now you've got to pay this person more. You shouldn't have to do that if the other person's performing.
Yeah, correct. And going to the next point where you've got, that performance management cycle post probation, that's where this documentation we're talking about, doing performance appraisals, behavioural plans, performance improvement plans, documenting these things well. If you're terminating post probation and you're definitely not documenting this stuff, that's going to be a real problem. Going back to your point before about blindsiding people, one situation that can be unavoidable due to business rationale is redundancy.
Yes.
And redundancy is something that, treated well, it's not good for both parties, because you've invested in someone and now that role's redundant. Now, let's just briefly talk about why the right way to do redundancy. And there's a couple ways you can do it. Redundancy by reasons of economic situation, aka you're really great, I'm paying you 100 grand, but I can only afford 60 because the business is not traveling as well as we would like. Would you agree to moving from 5 days a week to 3 days a week, so we can still have you in the business, but your 100k salary remains, but we're going to pay you that prorated now? Can we reduce your hours? You give them that choice. If they say, yep, I understand, look, those 2 days I'll do a side hustle, whatever, I'll get a casual job, whatever, great. If it doesn't work out, you've given them first a choice in that situation.
I've even seen businesses do this the right way about this, of being like, okay, well, we can only put you onto this, but we have connections that may be able to help you to supplement this in other ways.
Correct.
So, and they may be complementary to the business.
Correct. So you work through that process. Now, if it's generally that the role's no longer required, you first have to think, can I redeploy them in another role? So if they're in administration, can they be used in the finance team, or can they be used in the marketing team? If they just don't have the skills for that, and there's no role that ties close to their skill set, then it's by reason of genuine redundancy. So you sit down and you have to sit down and give them the reasons of why the redundancy is happening. There's no chance for further deployment. You're not rehiring the role. So it's not by you're not doing constructive dismissal, you're not making them redundant and hiring. You're not getting a sales executive then hiring a sales manager. It's the same role. So you have to be really careful there.
And I can tell you that employees will be looking for.
Of course, you don't want to be doing that. But they're going to get told by their best mates who they work with. So you're not going to go and do that. So
I've seen I'm sure you've seen this too. We've spoken about this before, where someone has been terminated or made redundant. I'm used for those listening with inverted commas there. But then all of a sudden, in the next couple of days, that employer has put a job ad up for something that's basically a wolf in sheep's clothing, so to speak. It's almost the same role.
Yep.
And it's like,
and that's against. Well, that's where you're going to set you up for a general protections claim, and you're going to be in big trouble there. So general redundancy. You're not going to hire this role. You've got no need for this role. You're not looking to redeploy the role. You're not outsourcing the role, because there's rules around outsourcing to OS countries as well about redundancies. So be very careful how you manage it. Get advice around redundancy. But as a general redundancy, they need to know what their entitlements are, when they're getting their money, and as soon as they deserve their money from the next pay run. So just be careful with how you're managing redundancies, especially the impact it can have on your cash flow as well, because a lot of people get that very wrong. Really, as well with that is, always giving an employee choice if possible. If they say no, then it's a no. If they say yes, then how can you make it work 3 days a week? Is it that it's 5 days a week, but they start at 9 and finish at 2? So you get the 5-day work, but they're working less hours. How can it actually work? So, and the goal is when the business is healthy again, you can go back up to 4, then back up to 5. So in COVID, we gave a lot of advice around this, and a lot of these guys are back to 5 days, and they haven't had to re-recruit. And the relationship between the employer and employee is so much better because they just didn't BS each other. They said, this is the situation. We love you. We want you. We don't want you to be made redundant, but we're in this situation.
Yeah, we don't want to lose you altogether. We want to keep you, but this is what we need to do.
Correct, and that's been a good thing. And that's there's laws around that. So just be very careful how you manage that.
Cool. Look, I think that's a pretty concise wrap of some certain things. Obviously, some are topical to right now. Other things, just things that our team sees popping up from time to time. Yeah. So please, hopefully you've taken something from this. Maybe not all of it was relevant to you. There's 1 or 2 things you've picked up, whether that's about casuals, whether it's around award interpretations. But if there's something that you've taken from today and being able to apply to your business, well, we're happy about that. Of course, here at Happy HR, we like to think ourselves, and we know we are Australian small businesses HR department in a box, managing all of your compliant contracts and policies and building those phenomenal position descriptions that we're talking about, giving you that fantastic HR advice, and better yet, giving you a cloud-based platform to manage the whole employee life cycle from start to finish, giving you reminders and notifications so that you can be HR happy, as we say.
Exactly right.
So thank you so much, everyone, and we'll speak to you next time.
Thanks.
Thank you.